Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, you know this fella right here. That is the $1 million man himself, the Hall of Famer, Ted DiBiase. Ted, what's going on?
Hey, Marcus, it's you, buddy. I am another day, another dollar, or maybe the $1 million man should say another million.
That would be nice.
Wishful thinking, right?
Sure.
I
like
just
that
over the last couple of days, I went and did an appearance in Canada. I had not been to Canada for a long, long time, and I did an appearance there. There was called. Let me find it again.
I think I know this one, the Arena Rumble up there in Australia.
Yeah, that's the one. And it went great. They brought me in there. It's the Arena organization is something that they help and in different ways, handicapped and I guess maybe even orphaned kids. So it was a really good cause, and I made an appearance they had a wrestling show, and then again, I've been in and out of Canada, and they knew I had a ministry as well, so that's why they picked me to come up there. So anyway,
man, that's awesome, and I'm sure that your fans north of the border were absolutely psyched to get to see you and spend.
Oh gosh, man, I had not been to Toronto in forever. Like, I mean, it was like I couldn't even remember when. So it was really nice to go back and see a lot of friends. There was a couple. They're not actually a couple. It's really funny. One guy's name is Mark, and the girl's name is Kathy. Mark and Kathy are very good friends. They're not married. They're just very good friends, and they both love wrestling. And, so when I would go to Toronto, I would see them together all the time, and again, they're just fans. Of course, Mark was there for this thing, and unfortunately, I guess Kathy couldn't make it. But anyway, I was really glad he showed up because, they wanted me to make the presentation of this check to the organization, to the Arena organization, and I did that right after the first match. Now, and Mark was there, and he said, Ted, he says, I've been to some of these shows before. They could go, you could be here till midnight. And I said, we're leaving now. And he took, and it was all the way across. It was, way back on the other side of Toronto, by the airport was my hotel. And, Mark dropped me off there because I had a 6 a.m. departure.
Oh man.
Now the Toronto airport, I don't think they even show up to, start checking you in till like about 4:30. And I was there. I was useless. When I got home yesterday, I made it home. I got home about 10:30. My flight landed in Jackson, and I just came to my room, and I spent most of the day in bed.
Man, you're still out there making the towns and keeping busy just like the old days, but man,
I'm kind of, sort of.
Maybe not. The schedule's a little lighter.
Yeah.
But man, I'm glad you were able to make some time for us this week. Of course, we're always happy to get to chat with you and pick your brain. And this week, Ted, we're gonna set our sights on 40 years ago in January and February 1984, and the arrival of the mysterious Mr. R character. And man, I cannot wait to get into these notes. We've got some great videos to go along with it this week, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes for us to talk about. So Ted, we're back here in 1984. Well, actually, it's right at the start of 1984, January 1st. When we last left off, you had defeated Tommy Rich in a loser leaves town match, and it was looking like the bad guy had gotten the better of the territory's favorite babyface. However, here on January 1st, 1984, you've got a match with Bob Armstrong in the Omni when a new competitor surfaces in Georgia. Let's have a look at our first clip this week.
Okay, and let's see what's going on here. And suddenly here is this masked Mr. R catching Ted DiBiase and exploding with lefts and rights to the head. DiBiase being beaten back up against the ring ropes, and he is getting a taste of his own medicine.
Yes, this Mr. R just happened to come by, and Ted DiBiase, how does it feel?
It apparently doesn't feel too good. DiBiase catching it again from the Mysteria masked Mr. R. And so it looks, well, of course, I don't know who that is, but I know who you are, Johnny Rich, and it looks like the Riches are back in action.
Well, Gordon, I said the Riches would be there, and they were there in full force, and Ted DiBiase, I just hope that your head don't hurt too bad.
All right, so there it was, the famous debut of Mr. R. What do you think watching it back all these years, Ted? Did it bring back any memories?
Oh gosh, yeah, that was a lot of fun, and in reality, what they did, they copied something that we had done in Mid-South with Cowboy Bill Watts and JYD. It was a great gimmick. It was funny because, for me to, like jump up and down and scream and holler and go, everybody knows it's Tommy Rich, everybody knows it's Junkyard Dog, so.
That's what was cool about it, was that, like, both of the outfits are very obvious. Like, you can look at Stagger Lee and say, like, well, it's Junkyard Dog under a mask. Kind of the same thing here with Mr. R. He's not even trying to, like, conceal his voice in promos. It's, like, very evidently Tommy Rich. So it does make me wonder, though, Ted, I know I'm asking you to reach back 40 years, but do you recall if you would have come up with this idea for creative? Because, I mean, it's something that worked for you in Mid-South, to your point, and now you're bringing it to Georgia.
It wasn't me. I mean, the original, I had already done this with Junkyard Dog and Stagger Lee. And so I know that... I'm trying to think if it was during that time. I don't think it was during that time because Bill came over and he was going to kind of try to book, but that was much later, and he didn't last there long anyway.
So at this moment, the two people that were helping to book the most were Ole and Buzz Sawyer. Were kind of in charge of all the creative. So I don't know. I have a feeling. I know that Ole was watching a lot of what was going on because that's how he became interested in Jake in the first place. Was watching him in like the 1980 Mid-South. So I know that Ole was very tuned in. So maybe he saw that Stagger Lee thing and said, like, well, I've got DiBiase here. Maybe we can kind of copy this idea.
Yeah.
I didn't want to pass this by without diving further into the name I mentioned earlier either. You're working in the Omni, which is a pretty legendary building, and you've got a legendary opponent with Bullet Bar Bob Armstrong, who's the patriarch of the Armstrong wrestling family. Would this period have been the first time that you would cross paths with Bob?
Well, I had met Bob Armstrong, I mean, of course, like through actually, meeting the boys. And the Sons who came up, and by the way, the Sons, did well. They took their father's name and lived up to the legacy. But yeah, I didn't, and I knew of Bullet Bob Armstrong before I met him because, he's just one of those, for that generation, was one of the icons.
Well, if you remember, Bob had been in a weightlifting accident and had his nose essentially torn off his face. He needed plastic surgery. It cost him like 30 grand or something, which is a whole lot of money back then. And that's why he would end up working under a mask for a while. Here in Georgia, it was turned into a storyline during this time, and with the story being that you're the one who caused him to get the plastic surgery. And Ted, I've seen an internet rumor that you were actually there when Bob lost his nose and maybe even accidentally caused it to happen. So can you clear up that internet rumor? Were you actually involved?
No, that's, I was nowhere near that that accident. The accident was, the accident happened. It was a weightlifting accident.
Hmm.
Where the bar slipped out of his hand and it fell on his face,
Yeah.
and that's what happened. And I wasn't there.
It's really funny because as I was doing research for this, I was like, I saw that rumor out there online. I can't remember. It was like some message board or something, and somebody was saying that. I was like, there's no way. But other people were like corroborating it. That like, yeah, I think Ted was there and may have bumped into the weight bench by accident, causing him to lose his grip. And
No,
I was like,
no,
that just doesn't sound
no,
accurate to me.
no.
Okay.
That's just fans, that, again, let's bury the heel as much as we can.
No wonder everybody back in those days was pissed. They were like, "Well, here's this guy who he actually did hurt Bob." So
No,
I guess it's good
no.
heat. What was it like working with an old timer like Bob? Did you have to adjust your style at all?
No. I mean, gosh, I mean, it's kind of like we call it doing the dance, and um, well, Dick Murdoch was not that much older than me, but I mean, and again, a tremendous wrestler. It was Murdoch who actually got me booked with Bill Watts. When Murdoch just said he says, I'm going to work for Bill Watts in the Mid-South Wrestling. And he says, hey kid, he says, if you want, he says, maybe this would be a good time to get your feet wet and see if you really want to do this. And if you do, he says, I think I can get you booked. And he did with Bill. And so the summer of 75 is when I actually started, and I, opening match every night, but the guy across the ring was a veteran, and of course, me loving the business the way I do. I mean, I didn't just wrestle and get in the car and go on. I watched all the matches. I especially watched the guys in the main event, because those are the guys drawing the money.
So it sounds like, working with a guy like Bob would have been a really easy transition for you because you had learned how to work in the first place from guys from his
Well,
same
yeah,
generation.
and guys like Bob, and again, guys like Bob would be there to, talk you through it. That's like a lot of people don't know that, but we talk to each other out there all the time. Yeah, it's like a lot of times it's funny some of the things you do. Like, I might be laying on my back and the guy's got my arm, and he's looking at the referee who's right there, but he's talking to me. As far as the crowd is concerned, he's telling the referee something, and he might be saying, "Okay, Ted, I'm going to back you into the corner, and I'm going to go to turnbuckle. You reverse the turnbuckle and backdrop me coming out." And then you go and do it. There's ways to hide it, and that's part of the business.
And there you go, folks. A little inside knowledge that you can only get from a guy like Ted and his experience. That's awesome. Well, Ted, the classic heel that you are, you express your displeasure with the Mr. R situation, and we've got a clip of one of your promos from that time and your threats for Tommy Rich.
Going on, Gordon Soley? I smell a rat. I smell a big fat rat, and his name is Tommy Rich. The man signed a contract. Everybody saw that piece of film that Johnny Rich was out here gloating over when somebody jumped me from behind. Everybody knows it's Tommy Rich. He's got no business being here. Well, let me tell you something, Rich. Let me tell all you Riches something. I'm going to Huntington tonight, and Brett Sawyer, I'm starting with you. And Rich, Mr. R, whoever you are, you stick your nose in that ring. And not only am I going to take that mask off, I'm going to take your head off with it. And then I'm going to Cincinnati tomorrow. And I've got this Mr. R in the ring. And I'm going to prove to everybody that it's you, Tommy Rich. And I'm going to get rid of you once and for good.
Hey, man, that line, not only am I going to take your mask off, I'm going to take your head off with it. That's a badass line. You were like the early Stone Cold, where I was like, "Hey, this guy's a bad guy, but I kind of like him because he's saying some cool shit."
Yeah.
Man, but
Oh
it was
man.
great, and the crowd was just really happy to see you frustrated there, weren't they?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, and that's that again. You're you know, you're an entertainer. That's what we're doing. I mean, it's wrestling, but we're, and it's the more that the heel can be humiliated, obviously the better, because the fans just love it. When everything backfires on him. So, and that's what all the heels should do when that happens is go crazy like. And everybody knows the heel is going to cheat to get the advantage. But then when you can have it backfire on them in such a way, it's kind of like, like I thought I'd gotten rid of Tommy Rich, and then this guy shows up with a mask, and he's got there's blonde hair hanging out the back of it, and everybody, he's wearing the same tights and boots. He's like, like, are you people stupid? It's Tommy Rich. It's Tommy Rich.
I mean, it is
the same thing with JYD.
It's such a genius thing to do because it is
Yeah.
obvious to everybody, but you're the one who kind of gets to stand there with egg on your face. And
Yeah.
that's what I hear about a lot of wrestlers today. Even the heels are kind of afraid to slip on a banana peel here and there, even though it's kind of their job. Like everybody wants to be the
Yeah.
badass heel. Like
Yeah.
it's okay for you to have to eat crow and look like a fool every once in a while, right?
Well, I mean, ultimately, that's what. Yeah, shoot, you ultimately want to please the fans. Like what being a heel. I mean, you do things obviously to make them hate you. But when now that they genuinely hate you, when you do slip on the banana peel, and some of the stuff starts backfiring on you, well, the more that you as the heel put that over, that the bigger the laugh for the good guys.
Right. Like think about when you pull a prank on somebody. If that person no sells the prank, you're not really having as much fun at the end of it. But if they sell it hard and they
Oh
get
yeah,
angry, like, oh
yeah,
man, it makes it more fun.
yeah.
All right. Well, something else jumped out at me here, Ted. In that clip, you're beginning to grow out your beard for the first time in your career. Of course, in the WWF, you would end up having a beard for the entirety that you were there. But I mean, up until this point, you've been clean shaven. Why
Yeah.
grow out the beard at this time? Do you remember?
I have no idea. It's kind of like I was always a legitimate baby face. I mean, it was kind of like when I started, I was 20 years old or almost 21. But a lot of people thought I still looked like a teenager, and it's kind of like, and most of the heels that you would see in wrestling, were bearded guys and these rough looking characters,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have legitimately like a baby face and clean shaven and all that stuff. So I guess I was just trying to look more like a man and not a boy.
A little more rugged out
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Well, following this, you'd be working with the likes of Buzz Sawyer, Pez Whatley, and Johnny Rich. And on January 26th in Toledo, you'll get a match with Mr. R, and he'll pull off a DQ victory so that you still remain the champion. However, Ted, something interesting happens just 2 days later. As a reminder, you hold 2 titles at this time. You're the National Heavyweight Champion, which is the belt that you have with you on TV all the time. But the belt you'd never have with you is the one that you won in Japan back in October of '83, the United National Heavyweight title. So you're a double champion, but you're really only representing one of them. Do you have any idea why your other belt was not featured on TV ever?
Well, I mean, it's the thing about it, Japan's a whole different world. It's kind of like it's a different world. It's almost like okay, you could be the whatever, and for example, Stan Hansen and I, we were the I guess you would call us world champions in Japan. were the tag team world champions.
Mm-hmm.
But that was in Japan. Then that was never broadcast or mentioned in the United States.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, again, back in the day, I mean, it's kind of like the titles, the NWA, it's like the world heavyweight champion. Well, the NWA world heavyweight champion, he wasn't really the champion of the entire world. He was the champion of the NWA and whatever territories recognized that title.
Gotcha.
But they called him the world champion.
So that United Heavyweight, it's called the NWA United Heavyweight title, but I guess that was more of like a Japanese title, which is why it's called United, presumably.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it's interesting too because this belt that you have not defended a single time since you've come back to the American soil, you're going to defend it on the 28th against Michael Hayes in Athens, and Michael's going to pull off the victory and claim the belt. So I have to imagine that Michael may have been getting ready to go start a run in Japan, and that's why they wanted to put the belt on him. That's all I can think, right?
I don't know. I don't remember this very well.
And I figured you might not even remember that you were a double champion at the time because gosh, probably most fans don't remember it because none of it was televised. This match against Michael Hayes was just a live show, so it's like nobody really knows what's going on. But yeah, the whole thing just seemed weird to me. It's like this belt that's just been presumably sitting at your apartment or whatever, all of a sudden it's just, oh, it's on the line and you're gonna lose it after never defending it. It's just, yeah, I don't know, the whole thing felt pretty strange. Well, in any case, what can you tell us about working with Michael Hayes? What was that like?
I love Michael. Michael, I tell you, Michael's really his gift is he's really smart when it comes to Michael will make a great booker. His understanding, obviously, the psychology of the wrestling is very good. I mean, it's like, and I think he's still there. I think Michael is still working in the office for the WWE in some capacity as part of the creative team.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not still there, then it's I don't know why he wouldn't be, but for as long as I can remember, and every year that I, go back and show up and see him, he's still there working for Vince.
Man, a really sharp, creative mind, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would tell him, I said, Michael, yeah, you're a real smart guy, pal. I said, but you need to learn how to work. you need to learn how to wrestle in the ring and not hurt somebody.
But did he have a reputation for hurting folks out there?
Not really. He just, just wild and crazy. But it was him and Terry Gordy. Terry Gordy was a great wrestler, buddy. I'm going to tell you what. Terry and I had several. I mean, we wrestled in Japan together a lot as well. And then what was the third member of the Buddy Roberts?
Mm-hmm.
But Buddy was a good worker. He was a funny guy too, but he was also a very good wrestler. So anyway.
It's funny because as we're recording this, I just talked to Jake yesterday about the Freebirds because they had their last match for him against him in WCCW when he was there. And so he was kind of talking about the Freebirds a little bit. And he said that Buddy may have actually been the best worker of the bunch. He was the one who was out there taking all the bumps and kind of doing all the hard work.
That's right.
Yeah. You would say best worker even above Gordy.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I would say best worker, Gordy. But I mean, Gordy and the best speaker of the group was Michael, and he was the worst worker.
And it's funny because
Michael, if you ever hear this podcast, you hear me laughing. These guys,
Don't get offended, Michael.
Don't be offended. I love you.
Well, it's you mentioned it. He's not a technician in the ring, and that's something that pretty much anybody who talks about him recognizes. But he's easily the best showman of the bunch. From your perspective, Ted.
And in terms of and he actually was hands down the best on the microphone.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
unbelievable. Like just a heat magnet too. Like really, really good at getting
Oh
people
yeah.
pissed at him. So from your perspective, Ted, would you say it's better for you as a heel during this time to work with a guy who's more technically sound, or is it better to work with a guy who's got more of a flamboyant, over the top personality?
Oh gosh, I mean, as a heel, I mean, you gotta learn how to work with everybody, and what you got to do is you have to figure out, and it's kind of like you got to study people, and there's a lot of guys that I would watch, before I wrestled, and I would pick out the things that they did very well, and of course, in terms of the body, the actual physical wrestling match. And I would try to highlight the things that they did well. And I would just try to stay away from things that he could, like, for example, JYD. What I'd always do with him is I would I just get the ton of heat on him, and cause he sold well. He sold, and he didn't have to do a lot of that stuff. And then when it came time for him to make his comeback, that's basically what I would do is I would have, he basically sit him in the middle of the ring, it's like, okay, backdrop me, clothesline me, so I kept feeding him, to where he didn't really have to run around the ring that much.
There's something you guys can look for if you go back and watch one of the old matches. Watch near the
Yeah.
end when he makes his comeback. See if he's just standing in the middle of the ring. I bet he is. Well, after you drop the belt to Hayes, there's a lot of other interesting stuff going on here. For one thing, you're in the Omni on February 5th, and you're taking on none other than Jack Brisco, and you're going to defeat him and retain your national heavyweight championship. Jack is a verified legend at this time and is considered an all-time great. He's a former NWA world champion. What did you think about sharing the ring with a guy like Jack?
Oh man, I tell you what, I looked forward to that match so much, and when they told me we were going to do that, I said, "Oh, this is great because this is going to be a night off for me. All I got to do is shut up and listen."
Mm-hmm.
and of course, I had that much respect for Jack. Because he'd been an NWA world champion, and he was a good one. One of the greatest wrestling matches I ever saw was Jack Brisco and Dory Funk Jr. Wrestling for the NWA world title in Amarillo, Texas. They wrestled 1 hour to a draw. But oh my gosh, what an unbelievable match. Just incredible.
Now, his brother Jerry is working here at this time as well. Have you had the chance to step into the ring with Jerry as well?
Yeah. I worked with Jerry as well, and Jerry, yeah, obviously, and Jerry was a very, very good hand. I mean, but I would still, put Jack ahead of him. And Jerry, if you ever see this podcast, just. I love you, buddy. I love you.
Jerry, I know that Jerry loved his brother Jack, so I'm sure he'd probably agree. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah. And you talk about a couple of really good guys. They were great. They were great, man.
Well, they were also helping to run the territory at this time. And what's interesting here, Ted, is on the same night, February 5th in the Omni, as you're facing Jack, Jake Roberts faces Jerry Brisco and captures a victory. Jake spoke to me on the Snake Pit about this exact match in this moment because there were some really big things that resulted from it. Jake assumed he was putting Jerry over in the match, but instead, Jerry told Jake in the middle of the match to hit the DDT and beat him. And when Jake goes for the cover, Jerry offers him the booking position in replacement of Ole and Buzz Sawyer. So apparently Ole was absolutely furious about the change, and Buzz was so upset that he quit the promotion. following this. So right here in the ring, live while in action, Jake is finding out from Jerry that he's going to become the new booker for Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, man, there's a lot to discuss here. First off, do you remember Jake getting this opportunity?
Well, I was there. You know, I mean, I wasn't, you know, privy to that conversation, but yeah. And, you know, that's the other thing about Jake that I've always admired. He has that skill, and it's kind of like, you know, and, you got to know what you're really good at and what you're not. You know, it's kind of like, for me, my skill was, you know, you tell me what you want, and I could go out in the ring and I could make it happen. And I can, you know, you give me any opponent, if I have time to study him or whatever, and I can make that guy look good or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But, you know, I wasn't the gifted booker. You know, I wasn't like, okay, the guy who could say, okay, we're going to do this with this guy, and they're going to do this. And then the following week, because then you got to, it's kind of like you start way out here and you work backwards. That's what I've been told. You know, it's like you start at the end where you're going to finish, and then you work backwards.
Yeah.
And anyway, but yeah, Jake's always had a great head, you know, and for the psychology and you know, putting guys together. I mean, I could see where different guys would be suited for one another and stuff like that. But to be that idea guy, to think about, okay, we're going to do this, and then we can do this, and then we can do this. That was never me. But Jake's always had that.
Now, did you know that about yourself at this time? I ask because I'm curious, like if Jack or Jerry had offered you a spot booking, you know, you still being a fairly young guy in the business, do you think you would have accepted it, thinking you could do it, or did you know even back then, like, nope, not my
No, I knew back then. I said, you know, that's not for me, you know. So.
Well, and Jake was passionate about it. He talks about it even to this day that, you know, every time he went to a new territory, he was like, hey, can I help book? And he would end up helping Bill Watts book here down the road for free.
Yeah.
Bill Watts wasn't paying him for it. He was just doing it because he loved doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we discussed before that Buzz and Ole both had a tendency during this era to book themselves to look really strong, most notably with Buzz and his brother Brett defeating the Road Warriors during this time. It's funny because as I look at events after this, as soon as Jake takes over, he's consistently putting over Ronnie Garvin. Kind of shows you that Jake is all business, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about it when an active wrestler gets the opportunity to book? You know, most of the time it's a guy who's either a promoter or a former wrestler who gets the opportunity to pick up the pencil, as they say. I mean, obviously Jake is willing to do business, but we hear that a lot of other guys like Ole and Dusty and plenty of others were not quite as responsible when it came to objectivity.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's kind of like, if you're going to be the booker, then be the booker and be objective enough to not try to always highlight yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, you know, it's if you can find that balance to where, you know, like you're making your, you know, okay, you became the booker, and then I'm trying to think, one of the guys that they had booking there while I was there, he was horrible.
Your first run in
Robert
Georgia?
Fuller.
Yeah, that was your first run there.
Robert Fuller was horrible booker. Oh my gosh, he wasn't even really that good of a wrestler. He almost, you know, I'm glad Buck Robley came along, because Buck came along and took the book, and Buck saved me, buddy, because they had just about killed me off. Not, you know, maybe not intentionally, but it's kind of like Robert Fuller was told to get me over, and the way he was getting me over was he was booking himself with me. I mean, as a tag team.
Well, and for those of you who can remember, it was when Buck Robley took over. That's when Ted got the creative with the Freebirds, where he got all those pile drivers and stuff. Which
Yeah,
is, man, a really strong angle for him to leave Georgia on the first time around.
yeah,
So that's all thanks to Buck Robley. So yeah, he's
yeah.
one of those guys with a great mind for the business.
Yeah, I spent 4 days in an Atlanta hospital, and there wasn't a thing wrong with me. That's
Now
a good worker.
that is dedication to the craft. Ted, in this month, you're bumping up against some stars from wrestling's past, but interestingly, you also get a chance to team up with wrestling's future and a couple guys who will go on to be considered by many the greatest tag team of all time. You were not in the Legion of Doom with Hawk, Animal, and the Spoiler and Jake, but on February 10th, 1984, you're going to team up with the Road Warriors to beat Brad Armstrong, Mr. R, and Brett Sawyer. So at this time, the Road Warriors are apparently green as goose shit. What was it like working with them?
Oh my gosh. Again, good guys, but not great wrestlers. They just, I mean, they had the look, and I mean, and to their credit, they did pretty good on a mic, but I mean, oh my gosh.
This is essentially, I mean, they had just started in Georgia in 1983, and they were just brand new to the business. I mean, Ted, when you take a look at a card as you're like, okay, what am I doing tonight? And you see that you're paired up with the Road Warriors, is that like, it's got to feel like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to be taking a million bumps tonight. Like, was that pretty much like the vibe, or how did you feel about it?
Yeah. Well, and I don't think I worked with them much then.
Beyond that.
But personally, both those guys were wonderful guys. Now, Mike Hegstrand, that's right, and that's his real name.
Yep, Hawk's
real name, and Mike was a great guy. He'd give you the shirt right off his back. But Animal was the one that was kind of like, yeah, he had to help Mike keep both his oars in the water.
Like even here in Georgia at this time, it's like pretty obvious that these guys are on the gas. They're built like nobody else in the business. You could probably argue that they're about as big, if not bigger in muscle as Hogan. So they are absolutely massive, and certainly they were no strangers to the party scene. Jake and I talked about it on a Legion of Doom episode on our podcast. I mean, at this time, did you recognize that there were drug issues going on, and not just with those guys, but in general? Were people displaying that they had drug issues, or was it not quite so prevalent just yet?
Well, it's kind of like you knew who was you knew who the druggies were. Mm. You'd find out. I mean, it's kind of like, pot was a big thing then, and I couldn't stand it. It's like, okay, two things happen if I smoke a joint. It's like, wake up, Ted, wake up, and then when I do wake up, I'm really hungry.
That's the same with me.
The munchies, man. But I mean, it's kind of like, but pot, it's kind of like JYD. And I'd see him do it. JYD would get in a car, and he's driving, and early in the morning, and he would smoke a joint. And it was like, for him, it was like giving him speed.
Oh, he'd get happy.
Yeah, he'd get happy and alert. Nah, but pot never did that to me. No.
Nope.
I might as well just find a corner and just go there and give me a pillow.
I want food and I want TV whenever I smoke pot. Well, let's get to something I think a lot of listeners are going to point to as the main event of the podcast this week. You've got a TV match on February 18th, and you're set to defend that national heavyweight title against Mr. R. Let's drop in on the final moments of this one.
With that glove. DiBiase has Mr. R in trouble here. DiBiase drives a foot to the side of the head. DiBiase with a full body slam. You can see everybody giving a thumbs down signal to Ted DiBiase. He's after the mask. Wait a minute. Just a second. There, the mask is off. But there outside the ring is Tommy Rich. That's Brad Armstrong in the ring. Brad Armstrong in a side reverse. He got the pin. You got yourself a new national champion. Brad Armstrong has just taken the National Heavyweight Championship away from Ted DiBiase.
All right, there it was. What a moment. That's something I see and hear about all the time. Brad Armstrong and Tommy Rich pull a fast one.
Yeah, that was that was good booking too. Man, Brad was great. He's another one that, God bless him. He just wasn't with us long enough. And, but he was, I loved working with him. He was easy. He was a real deal too, and Tommy was, great on the microphone and everything, but just as country as the day is long.
He certainly was. And I've heard a lot of people say, actually when you and I did our episode before talking about Tommy Rich, and I said, why do you think he never got a shot in the WWF? I saw a lot of people were making the comment like he's probably a little bit too country for Vince, which is something we've heard over the years, that Vince really wasn't interested in guys with those real strong Southern accents. So I don't know. Do you think that might have something to do with it?
I have no idea, but of course I wondered as well, for somebody like that why Vince wouldn't take an interest in him. I mean, JYD, had his run with Vince, but that wasn't very long, was it?
Well, he was up there for about 3 years, and then if I remember right, he actually quit with no notice or something like that. I think that was when he was starting to experience some serious drug dependence. But yeah, he was up there for a while. I mean, like Vince has brought some very Southern folks up there, but yeah, that's always kind of been the rap, is that he really doesn't let, Tony Schiavone came to work there in 1989. And apparently Vince said like, hey, you got a little too much Virginia in your voice. You gotta make it sound like you work in New York. So Tony had to adjust his voice. So yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing.
I never knew that.
Yeah. It's so I mean, maybe it's not quite as prevalent as we're all led to believe, but yeah, that's always been like kind of the rumor about Vince, is like, nope, he does not want strong Southern accents.
Yeah.
Well, so Brad Armstrong, let's talk about him for a second. Obviously you just worked with his dad, Bullet, and I'm sure you've worked with many of the Armstrong brothers. For your money, is Brad the best worker of the bunch?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hands down. He was so good. Yeah.
What set him apart?
I don't know. I mean, he had the total package. I mean, again, his brothers, were built fairly well, but he had, I think, the best body, he had the best look. He was the guy. And I try not to take anything away from the other guys. That's a whole family of wrestlers, and they were all good.
They were, and I think you could probably argue that the Road Dog Brian Armstrong was probably the best on the mic, maybe. But and I know that Brian would even tell you today, like, nope, Brad was the best worker of the bunch by a long shot. I mean, but
Road Dog, you give him the microphone.
Oh yeah, one of the most entertaining guys on the mic ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's I've heard a lot of folks over the years talk about what Brad was missing that kept him from reaching greater heights in wrestling. It sounds like he had a lot of the key elements. Ted, what do you think it was that he just did not have that kept him out of the main event consistently?
It'd be hard for me to say. I really, I don't know. I never really thought about that. But he would get a push, but he never did get the push.
Right.
Yeah. So I really don't know.
You know, the thing I've always heard over the years was that he had this really great personality backstage, funny, easy to talk to, one of those cool guys. But apparently, he had a hard time bringing that to the screen, where it's like maybe his charisma was lacking a little bit. I don't know.
It could be, you know. Yeah, maybe. I mean, because like I said, Road Dog, give him the microphone and he'll talk all day. You know, he had good mic skills, and but I think that Brad was a better worker.
All right, guys, we're going to be back next week with another episode, and it'll be time again for us to turn our attention back to WCW in 1997 to talk about Ted's run with the NWO and the build to Super Brawl that year. Should be a blast as always. But look, before we go, I got to remind you guys, get over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Go and get subscribed. Tons of great clips. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan has joined us over there, Ted's old Rat Pack partner. And man, not only are we doing the Hacksaw Hour there exclusively on that YouTube channel, but Jim also provides fantastic videos from his day-to-day life. The most recent one is Jim on the Jericho Cruise. And let me tell you, brother, that has got some great stuff from Jim. He's hilarious and always brings the energy. So go and check that out. Again, it's youtube.com/@everybody's-got-a-pod. Go and get subscribed. Follow Ted. It's on social media at MDM Ted DiBiase on all social platforms. Follow me at Marcus P. D'Angelo on X, and follow the podcast at Ted DiBiase Pod on all social platforms. Ted, it was another fun look back to Georgia again, my friend.
All right, brother. Look forward to the next time. And remember, always, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
See you guys next time on Everybody's Got a Pod.